talking about SNL, the history, the mysteries, and all the hot impressions in between, breaking down all the numbers as well. In your favorite sketches with special guests, it's on the Saturday Night Network.
Yes, that is right. Welcome everybody on in to the Saturday Night Network for our hot take show for week number 3 of season 50, covering the Ariana Grande and Stevie Nicks episode of Saturday Night Live. My name is Jon Schneider from the SNN. So happy to be with you tonight as a presentation of LateNighter.com and with some great guests on the show and even more friends in the chat in a wild night at Saturday Night Live. I'm so excited to get into all the moments, everything that happened on this crazy night. We're here a few minutes late. The show started late. There was things that were happening all over the show. We're going to get into everything tonight, so I can't wait to do that with my man, Sammy Kay. Sammy, how are you?
John, I'm doing well. It's so exciting to be back here at 1:18 in the morning. That means it's a hot take show. And I'm just having so much fun with season 50. So it was Yom Kippur today. So it's a big adjustment going from Yom Kippur to being up at 1 in the morning talking about SNL, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, it's such a wild day. Hope you had an easy fast, Sammy, but great to get to speak to you tonight. And joining us as well for the first time in season 50 is the amazing Kaleena Steakle. Kaleena, how are you?
I am so great. So excited to be here. Was just saying beforehand that I'm finally joining you guys in your 1 something a.m. time zone. So I'm excited to see how long my brain works, because it's usually where I start taking.
Yeah, it'll be really, really fun to go into the show tonight. A show that started 5 minutes late. So for those, I know a lot of you sometimes, we have a great chat who watches the show live and comes join us after. It's a really fun way to experience the show. So I do encourage it. But we do have a lot of people who are going to watch us, on Sunday morning and on Monday after watching the sketches online and don't watch the live show. So let me tell you about some of the things that happened tonight. And then we'll get into the headlines, the hot takes, and all of the sketches. So first up, the show started 5 minutes late. This isn't unprecedented. We've had especially in previous decades of the show, way back when, we've had entire shows, at least once I could tell you, where a show was delayed for an entire night. But it has happened where the show has been pushed back, especially back in the days where there would be many different types of football that would be on NBC. Tonight we did have the Ohio State and Oregon game that push the show back, I think, at least 5 minutes. So the show started at 11:35 tonight. So that is why we had a little bit of a delay. Also, a couple things happened during the show tonight that were rather unusual. So I am waiting to get some word back on exactly what was going on from our friends that we had in studio. So hopefully we'll have those answers for you when we get to that portion of the show tonight. But at the start of Stevie Nicks' second performance, we get the usual bumper that was, very extended, unusual. Usually it will be on for maybe 10 seconds, and then they'll go to ladies and gentlemen, Stevie Nicks. That didn't happen. We went right back to commercial before we ended up going to her second performance. So we'll wait to find out what exactly happened in studio, and we'll let you guys know as soon as we get word back on that. As a result, timing gets pushed back a bit. Towards the end of the night, we get a sketch that we'll get into a little bit later on in the show, this Jennifer Coolidge sketch, which is, clearly live and happening in studio, only to go from that to 1 second later, we head over to this hotel detective sketch where it's impossible for our host, Ariana Grande, to go quick change from one to another unless, there's some crazy stuff going on. This was from dress rehearsal. So we had a dress rehearsal sketch that aired live on the show tonight. So a lot of crazy things happening in the studio beyond just those moments, which of course we will cover throughout tonight and the entire week. Let's get into the episode itself. Sammy, how are you feeling about the night? Any headlines or hot takes?
Yeah, my headline for tonight is, going into the season when we got that big announcement of hosts, the Ariana Grande episode was the one I kind of had maybe the least expectations for. Obviously, she's a returning host. She's a great personality, but afterwards, after watching this episode, she kind of, blew my expectations out of the water as far as her performance goes as a host. I haven't gone back and revisited her previous episode in, a long time. Obviously that title sketch, where she does all the, the vocal impressions is pretty memorable. And that performance stood out to me, but she kind of blew me away. And it's really surprising. Obviously there's stuff outside the show that is maybe stopped her from coming back sooner as a host. But I was just pleasantly surprised, and she definitely, as far as the 3 episodes we've had so far this season, she's the one that's kind of like expectation wise, kind of blown my expectations out of the water. So it was very excited to see her just kill it tonight.
Kaleena, how do you feel about the night we got?
I'm kind of in the same boat. I was excited to find out she was hosting. If you look at the wall behind me, I'm obviously a big Broadway fan, and so half of my personality right now is just the fact that the Wicked movie is coming out soon. And so I was just really excited to just be able to see her and kind of keep my momentum up for that. I was kind of the age group for her shows on Nickelodeon, and so I did kind of know her from that before I ever knew her from her music. And so I was excited to see if they were going to fully lean into just her singing or if they're going to let her show off her acting chops a little bit. And I personally feel like we got a pretty good mix in this episode, and I'm excited to dive into that a little bit further. But overall, this is a kind of surprisingly high-ranking episode for me. I kept trying to lower it because I thought it was maybe too high, but I stand by the rating that I'll give it later, because I think it was a really fun beginning to the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was a fun night overall. I think Ariana Grande is a really good host. Clearly, she's multi-talented, and you can use those talents to your advantage. Rewatching her season 41 episode, I do feel like the pacing of the episode to me felt a little bit stronger than tonight's, and the reason is because I felt that in that episode they went from her singing to her acting to her singing to her acting in a way that didn't necessarily feel so overwhelming with the singing. And I felt that tonight, the order of the sketches, it was like the first half of the show she was pretty much singing and everything. So again, I obviously, we like that she can sing. She's very talented, and it adds an element to all of these sketches. However, I do think that like maybe some of the sketches where she wasn't singing could have been mixed in the front half of the show, and I think it would have made the show feel a little bit more refreshing instead of very samey for some people at the start of the night. But overall, I'm feeling really good about Ariana. I honestly think like, there was some really good moments, including, this was a big night for JJ and Andrew Dismukes all over the show tonight. Chloe Fineman also had a really strong night. But Ariana Grande really was the star for this episode for me. I felt like she did a fantastic job, added to every sketch she was in. So overall, feeling pretty good and excited to talk about this episode and talk through it. Let's jump into the cold open that we saw here tonight. So we open up with a little bit of a fake out where we get a CNN The Source with Caitlin Collins, and Chloe Fineman is there to introduce us into what we think is going to be an extremely political cold open, only to pivot back to a Family Feud sketch. And I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, hey, Ariana Grande hosting season 41, like what year are we in right now? Because for many seasons in a row, we were getting a ton of these celebrity Family Feud sketches. It felt like a new signature Keenan moment to always have him as Steve Harvey doing, getting these different people to come in and do impressions. But we get the Family Feud election showdown, the first Family Feud sketch on the show in a long time, where we're going to get the Democratic side with Maya, Andy, Jim, and Dana. So all of our cameos are there on one side of things. And then on the other side, we have James Austin Johnson, Mikey Day, and Bowen Yang, the 3 cast members, ironically, on the Republican side, going head-to-head in a Family Feud. Lots of jokes ensue, and so on. So, Sammy, how'd you feel about how SNL handled their cold open tonight with our Family Feud sketch?
Yeah, this is an interesting way to open the show. I was very excited to see the Family Feud transition, going from, the newscast into that, because I love impressions. I love this format for impressions on the show. This is like the type of sketch that I return to a lot, just to see, throughout the years, all these different types of impressions. So I was really excited. As we get into this, it is kind of making me go back and think, wait, why do I really like this format on the show? And I think I started to realize as the sketch kind of progressed is that it is really nice and exciting and surprising to see like what the cast brings in each of those sketches to the table as far as a new impression goes. So I did feel like having all the returning impressions that we basically been seeing for 3 weeks in a row kind of, in a way hurt the Family Feud aspect of it for me, but as a kind of way to kind of switch up the format of cold opens, I was happy to see, this kind of avenue to go about. So it was like, I don't know. It's very like just a fascinating decision to see. I think for me, as far as standouts go, JJ, like by far still like his Trump, going into the season, kind of talking about how to tweak that. I really do feel like he has changed it a little bit in the way he's kind of performing it. And yet it's still really great. Um, as far as kind of, everything else we're seeing, some of the sort of cameos from alumni, I'm happy to see them. I'm starting to feel the contractual obligations of having them inserted into all these cold opens a little bit. Again, happy to see them, but it is starting to become diminishing returns. So I would say I'm a little mixed on it, but maybe leaning positive overall on this opening.
Kaleena, how do you feel about it?
I feel a little bit mixed. So I have to make a confession that I am behind on the first 2 episodes of the season because I typically work Saturday evenings.
Oh,
And
this
so
is fun.
I have not caught up yet. So this is actually my first time seeing the celebrity cameos in the political landscape. I've watched the quick clips just to kind of be updated. And so I had seen, Maya and Andy and Jim and Dana before, but it was fun at first getting to see it in the whole sketch and kind of like you guys, I was like, oh, this is going to be Family Feud. Okay, great. My problem was I immediately set my expectations too high because I just assumed it was going to be really fun and that the energy was going to start off really strong. And that held for a little bit extra for me just because it was my first time getting to see these impressions. And then I feel like they just kind of didn't really do anything with it. Like it kind of felt like one of those moments where they started off with a strong idea and then kind of just forgot to write the middle part or forgot to write like the punchline or where it was going to land. And at some point, I just started feeling like, oh my God, how long has this cold open been going on? And I don't know if it was because we were already so delayed. And so maybe I felt like I had been planted in front of my TV for a long time, or if this cold open actually was kind of exceptionally long. Overall, I mean, it was fun. I think, especially with this being an election year, this is always the part of SNL where people maybe start to feel the fatigue, where it's like they're hardly doing anything but political stuff. Sometimes I think SNL is at its strongest when it's doing political humor. Sometimes I think that's when I really start to miss like the really zany, really weird stuff because I feel like it gets, overshadowed by the political stuff. So we're early enough in the season that I think certainly time will tell a little bit with this. Overall, I'm just kind of in the middle on this cold open. I wasn't overwhelmed by it, and it wasn't the worst one that they've done either.
Yeah, I agree. I want to be very careful that we don't criticize Saturday Night Live for trying something different. Like they went to a sketch they haven't gone to in a few years. I know that they feel, they have to, and maybe contractually, as Sammy says, put all of these impressions in the sketch. But I thought this was a creative way to do it tonight. So I want to reward them for it. And again, I think when you do these game show sketches, especially in the Family Feud format, and this is something that we've talked about before on the show when we look back at some of those sketches for many years throughout the early 40s in those seasons, is that it gives you the opportunity as a fan or as somebody who evaluates the show to sort of look at each impression on its own and less about them interacting with each other. Whereas in episode 2 of season 50, we got a scene between some of the cast members or some of the cameos that we got to see them interacting. Tonight was more, what they're going to say to the camera, how they're going to go through the game, and you sort of look at each impression on its own. So it's easy to sort of say which ones work and which ones don't. I want to point out that I know that, Dana can, weigh on some people. For me, like having Dana Carvey in the building is still absolutely incredible. Let him do his thing. I love it. Even if there was some repetition, I died at the thank you, Regis. The stuff, I like to buy a vowel. Come on, Conan. Like all of that stuff really did work for me. I still think the Dana Carvey, Joe Biden experiment works. I sort of like imagine what would SNL have looked like had Biden been running for 2024. And then we got to see Dana in more of like that role instead of just coming in as like grandpa at the end of the sketch. So that to me is just very intriguing as an impression. And the other thing I want to point out is like I feel like Maya's Kamala has gotten so good that it's all just a given to us. Like this may be like the most understated thing of the last 3 episodes is that it's so good that nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about how much better she's been at doing this impression and how good that they've been for writing for her. So I think that was really fascinating. And the third thing that I really took away from this cold open is it is hilarious to me what the SNL makeup department and costume department is doing with JJ's Donald Trump impression, because it is so different looking than it was last year. I think I read online that they added like some sort of fat suit, but the makeup on his face and stuff like that, he just looks very different. And it's so jarring to me because I'm so used to looking at him for 3 years in one way. But I'm happy that they're trying things. I really feel like they're making an effort to get to the point. Is it the smartest political writing in the world? Absolutely not. But I am having fun with these the last few weeks. And that's, to me, all I could really ask for from these cold opens. So in a time where SNL has a little bit of a problem because the politicians are not actually doing debates right now, at least for the presidential candidates, I'm feeling good about what we got here. So overall, let's talk about this more throughout the week. Let's get into Ariana Grande's monologue that we got here tonight, where she comes out. So we knew that she was probably going to sing. She did sing. If you don't remember her season 41 monologue, she came out and she sang about how she's never really had an adult controversy. So she went into a whole song about the different potential controversies that she could get into in her life. So I figured she's probably going to come out and she's going to sing again this time. So we get her many years later on the show, singing about how she's just hosting this time, so she's going to keep it low key. Talks about her being Wicked, being in 2016 on the verge of electing the first female president. So much for that. And then doing some impressions that were a little Tidal-esque, similar to that sketch that we had where she did a little bit of a Britney impression as well. We get a brief shot of Bo and Yang about, we cut the Wicked sketch, and then she's not going to do a duet tonight in the hopes that Stevie Nicks may appear in the monologue, which would have been pretty epic. But Kaleena, how do you feel about Ariana's monologue tonight?
I first want to give kudos to her comedic timing, which I think is one of her strongest suits in general as an actor, but especially throughout this episode. I think especially against the playhouse of actors that she's with, kind of matching their beat, I think is not an easy thing to do. And I thought she started off really strong in the monologue with that. I would say this ranked a little bit higher for me when it was happening, like in real time, because I was excited, like, cool, okay, she's doing a little bit of humor. We're going to see a little bit of acting. We're getting to see her kind of like jazzy style of singing, which we don't always get. And then she's getting to do some impressions. I screamed for Bowen showing up. That was so fun. And then, as you mentioned in the beginning, when it became so repetitive that it's like, okay, she's singing in every sketch, I felt like ultimately over time that kind of took away from the monologue for me a little bit. So not necessarily to fault the monologue, because I think if that was a standalone thing where then it had been mixed in with a little bit more of the sketches where she's not just singing, I think it would have stood out a little bit more to me. But to be honest, in real time as we're talking now, the monologue maybe ranks as high as a couple of the other sketches where she sings.
Sammy, what were your thoughts on the monologue tonight?
I thought this was like a strong way to start off the show, for seeing her kind of come out there. And it is interesting, after having some hindsight, even in, my notes, I'm like, oh, I wonder if she's actually not going to sing throughout the night. And I fell for that. But it kind of like sort of checked all the boxes for like what you want from, this kind of host monologue. Like, she's got an incredible voice, so she's going to sing. You get the Wicked promo and you see Bowen out there. Bowen, who I thought, based on all the promotion for Wicked and everything, was going to have like a much stronger episode, especially after the last two episodes. But, he had some solid pieces. Good to see him. But overall, it's a song monologue that I found, the song itself was catchy enough. And I was happy to see those impressions. I didn't necessarily need them to do a repeat of the title sketch. She kind of does that later on in the Celine Dion sketch later, but she's so good at doing that. So I'm glad they found a way to sort of incorporate that into the monologue.
I'm happy to do it. I mean, I'm happy that she did do it. For me, I always like it when SNL host with such time apart from those two episodes. Like, I think that having somebody come back at a different stage of their life is more fascinating for me to get to see than somebody coming back season to season. And like, as much as I love Nate Bargatze, and I think it was so cool to get to see him pull off again a great episode this season, I think Ariana Grande coming back so many years later as a host, to me, was fascinating, because then you can watch these two episodes, 41 and 50, and see, like, what's the difference? Is there like more maturity in the vocals? Is the sketch writing different because they're older? All of that stuff. But for me, I think this was a really good start to the night tonight, because I felt that it established with all of us that she has this stage presence out there. There's always a concern, right? That somebody who maybe doing double duty a la Ariana in 41, or is a traditionally more of a singer, can't necessarily pull off everything that SNL asks you to do. But she shows you right away up front that I'm here, I'm game for anything. I can do impressions, I can sing, I can dance, I can act. And when she does that, I think it allows everybody to buy in for what's to come. So I think she did exactly what we could have asked from her for the monologue. And I love that we got to see that tonight. And also, fun for all the Wicked fans to get to see Bowen and Ariana together in that monologue, and a fun nod to that. Okay, let's get into the first sketch of the night. We had this Bridesmaid Speech sketch where James Austin Johnson is out there doing the best man speech for Andrew Dismukes and Chloe Fineman, who are playing Kelsey and Matt, the bride and groom. Ariana comes on as the maid of honor, who I believe is a sister with the same mom but different dads. Introduces the rest of the Kel squad, who comes out Sarah, Heidi, and Ego. And they're going to sing a special song about their bachelorette trip to the tune of Sabrina Carpenter's Espresso. And it ends up being all about this guy that they met named Domingo, and how the bride actually cheated on the groom with Domingo, who ends up being Marcelo at the end. And we get a pretty long song with Espresso as the tune. So, Sammy, how do you feel about this one?
I actually really like this one. Maybe it's because I'm just like
Really?
yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's like an amazing sketch or anything like that, but as far as like opening up the night with something like this, where and it might just be like the time in my life I'm at, where like I'm going to a lot of weddings, so this is kind of like this. I'm not saying I've seen this necessarily, but I've seen like some cringy wedding speeches and toasts at this point. So being able to incorporate that here, and also I like that they, right off the bat kind of have Ariana Grande sort of not play against type, but having her do like the bad singing voice to me. Like she's like really good at singing poorly, and I found that like added to the sketch for me. I don't know. I enjoyed seeing Sarah kind of with those vets, Ego and Heidi at this point, like being able to see them sort of collaborate together. It definitely is like territory that we've seen time and time again the last couple of years on SNL, with this sort of cucking type of thing on the show. So I didn't think it was anything like crazy or revolutionary, but I found the sort of cringe comedy of it, and the way the song keeps going and going, it kind of makes your skin crawl a little bit. I think that was sort of the point. Once you kind of bring Marcelo in there and everything like that, like it kind of loses that escalation for me. It's exactly where you're thinking it's going. They've teed it up. So I don't know. I kind of wish this went elsewhere instead of that sort of obvious route. But I was overall, happy to see it.
I'm stunned that you like this as much as you did.
me and my girlfriend watched it, together. And we were both laughing a lot. So it's I don't know. I think it is just the time in my life where I'm at right now.
Okay, well, good luck. I hope your girlfriend doesn't run into a Domingo at any time soon. Kaleena, do you feel good about this one as well?
Sammy, it's such a pleasure to disagree with you. That was a bad sketch, dude. I don't. That's not even a hot take. That's just a wrong take. It was one. I don't know why this stuck out to me in particular, but I'm really tired of seeing Heidi play these type of characters where she has to do that like one note kind of Valley Girl voice. I've seen it once and I've seen it 1,000 times, and that is kind of how I felt overall from this sketch. At first, I thought the concept was pretty funny. Sammy, I also did put in my notes that I was like shocked at how well and convincing Ariana's like bad singing voice was, and that worked for me. But small technical difficulties, like them collectively not being able to keep up with when the cue was for them to start the bit again, was really like taking me out of it. And not that that's something that should have been perfected, but it's something as small as that took me out of it because other elements weren't strong enough to keep me in it, if that makes sense. I guess like I appreciated that it was topical. And much like you, I thought maybe it was going to go like a totally random kind of extreme route at the end. And to just have it be, to be honest, I don't know what cucking means. I'm sorry, I'm not on the internet, so I don't know what that means. But to just have
Probably
it,
good. That's probably a good thing.
to just
Yeah.
have it be this thing where
Keep your
they're like,
innocent doe eyes.
to just have it be this thing where he's just like being shamed. The whole time I was like, is this gonna go anywhere or is it gonna end? Or like, I just get disappointed, I guess, when you're in the middle of a sketch that feels like you feel like the writers just didn't have an ending in mind. And it felt a little bit early in the episode for me to already be feeling that way. I do want to give a shout out to Dismukes though, because his delivery of Not For Nothing, but the rhyming scheme has gone completely out the window, gave me a very hearty laugh, and maybe the only laugh in the entire sketch.
Yeah, this was rough for me. I gotta tell it like it is. I owe it to everybody, to be honest. I don't think that this worked, and I definitely think if you're going to air this, to put it at the top of the show was a poor decision. Because I think that what they were going for here, like part of me wishes that this sketch, they could have said their speech and said the stuff about Domingo instead of sung it to the tune of Espresso. But I also get that they were going for these like cheesy bridesmaid moments where people come up with the group song. So it's almost like there's almost like two games that are happening here. They're making fun of the cheesy bridesmaid or groomsman thing that people do at weddings, and then they're also trying to tell the story about the wife, cucking Dismukes. And I think that it's really difficult to understand what the whole story is here when they're singing it and they're trying to do it on live TV, and the choreography and the singing, like it became a little unintelligible at some point where I didn't fully get, like I knew what they were trying to say, but then you almost have to watch it a second time to get everything. And like, it's one thing to prepare a sketch that has Easter eggs in it where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back, so I'm going to watch and see what else I can find in it. But it's another that I feel that this sketch was like meant to be enjoyed on the first time, and I didn't. So I'm going to just be honest here and say like, this didn't really work for me. Hopefully if they ever try this again, it comes together in a different way. So that's sort of my 2 cents on it. But there are many other things that I did like in this episode, and we will get to them, including this next sketch, which was very fascinating from an SNL perspective. Because this card comes up at the beginning of the sketch, SNL Midnight Matinee. We've never seen anything like this. Last week, we got to the very classic, an SNL digital short. We've obviously had the PDD stuff in the past. But what is an SNL Midnight Matinee? Where we're going to see my best friend's house, where Ariana is playing Katie, who goes over to her best friend's house, Hannah, who's played by Chloe Fineman. Mikey Day plays Mr. Evans, who, it lets her in the house. And the older brother is played by Michael Longfellow. And it's this beautiful song, almost like a child's television show where she's singing about, going to her best friend's house and all the furniture singing. And I was watching this and I was thinking like, oh, okay, I'm going to come on the podcast and I'm going to think about my experiences going to my friends' houses and what they smell like and all this stuff. And that's what I'm going to talk about with this sketch. And then all of a sudden, it has this crazy turn, and it turns out that she sings into a cop played by Devin Walker, and then we get Heidi Gardner as a reporter, who says that the search for the crossword killer has led them to this house, and everything that we saw in the first half of the sketch turns out to be craziness from inside the house, because Mr. Evans is secretly the crossword killer, and Sarah's head is in the freezer, and all this stuff is all over the house. This was magical to me. I loved it. And we end on a Dan Bula short at the end. I know Stephen Castillo also had a major part in this one as well, but so happy that we got this, because I was completely fooled, and I'm glad that I was. Kaleena, how did you feel about this one?
Yeah, I was very confused at first. I didn't know like tonally what I was supposed to be interpreting there. I didn't know, kind of like you. I was like, oh, is this going to be kind of like a weirdly sweet thing? And then I was frustrated because I was like, okay, this is just another reason for her to sing, and like, what is going on? And then there was the kind of talking like set pieces and inanimate objects, and I was like, okay, it's getting weirder, but she's still just singing pretty and kind of twirling around the room. Like, I don't understand. And I don't know why. I feel like I should be maybe conditioned to expect kind of the big twist, or the complete 180, but I just was so confused trying to anticipate that what was going to happen, that I didn't think that that could happen. So then, yes, when it kind of just cuts to the crossword killer, I started laughing a lot because I was like, oh, okay, great. This is exactly how it should have played out, as I should have been confused and not expecting this. And now I'm like, well, wait, hold on. I don't want to miss anything. I feel like that's a sketch that I immediately would then want to go back and rewatch, right? Because like, oh, was there things that were leading up to this? I do feel like it maybe took like a while to kind of get to that point. I think if the reveal had been a little bit before, maybe it would have even been that much more impactful, because I did start to feel like the confusion was dragging a little bit too long. But I thought the visual gags really, really worked. And then lyrically, obviously, it got a little bit more creative. The line, oh my God, it was full of teeth, when she was talking about the rattle, I thought was like a perfect little throwaway line. So a delightful and unexpectedly weird little sketch. Also, guys, I did Google cucking because I thought you were referring to like some TikTok internet term. And so that's why I said I'm not on the internet. So I'm in the loop now, guys. I'm cool again.
Welcome to the Cuck Club. So we've seen a lot of gore on SNL in the last 10 years, sketches that end up, random gore ensues. But for this one, Sammy, I feel like the extremely long delay here and just the difference in tone between the first half of the sketch and the second half was enough for me to make this feel very different from anything we've seen before. And the best part of watching Saturday Night Live when your friends don't is that sometimes you can find these hidden gems, and then tomorrow I could be like, hey, watch this right now, and just to see their reactions. And I feel like that's what this sketch is. There were so many good things here. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, this was interesting for so many reasons. First off, the bumper of the SNL Midnight Matinee, that just intrigues me because I love the show just from a meta perspective, playing with different formats. And I don't know if this is something that is going to be, if we're going to see more Dambula shorts, something like that, where we see that sort of like a, please don't destroy type of thing. Like that alone, just from a SNL nerd standpoint, excited me off the bat. Just the way this was all shot to me was really cool, very throwbacky. And I'm kind of with Kaleena on this, to where it was taking a little bit for it to get going. And if the reveal was something that wasn't this, that was like a little less of a punch, I think, it's having the audience wait that long for that payoff it is, a big risk. But I think the risk they took here like really paid off for me. Another thing, having Sarah Sherman not be like front and center in the sketch, like she's like basically an Easter egg. If we maybe saw Sarah as like the Chloe Fineman character, earlier on the sketch, maybe it would kind of clue me into like the idea that this is going to take like a big turn. But yeah, the way this was all constructed, and everything, going back and seeing, the teeth in the shaker and everything like that. Just a lot of interesting ways to make this weird. And I feel like sometimes we kind of go to the same well of just violence and gratuitous blood and things like that to make things weird. But they found like serial killer weird stuff, which I think, made the contrast so much better. So yeah, I mean, was very happy to see this. Also, I want to shout out the puppetry, the puppetry, and also just tying that into the narrative of the sketch of like the puppets are telling him to like do all this stuff, and like she hears the voices too. Like that was like, such like a extra little sprinkle there at the end. So yeah, I was a big fan of this.
I love it too, because it creates the world of the sketch. That's what you really want when you're building something on the show, is that now, like, I'm not saying that we definitely need a sequel to this, but if they were to ever do something like this with Ariana Grande again on the show, Katie in the world of this My Best Friend's House sketch, according to Mikey's Mr. Evans, has the darkness inside of her. So we could see something in the future with her there. And again, I love those moments. So I see some questions in the chat about Please Don't Destroy and what their status is on the show. They're they're definitely still writing on the show, and I believe that they will create shorts later on in the season. My understanding is that they've been working with NBC, with advertisers, including Allstate, that Dean Winters Allstate character that's very popular. I think they've been creating a short for him, and like they've been working with the 50th, like for the 50th season with advertisers and stuff like that. So I assume just, there's a lot of people in the building, a lot of extra people in the building with the election. And I love that they're trying new things, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got PDD back in terms of their shorts on the show coming up in a little bit. So yeah. Okay, let's talk about the next sketch that we saw, which was this charade sketch where we have Andrew and Ariana, who's playing Diane in this sketch. So they're the parents. We got Emil and Jane as other I guess children in the sketch, and then Bowen and Longfellow, who are a couple. Longfellow Josh is Diane's sons, who brings her new boyfriend Bowen to the house, and they're going to play charades. It ultimately results in a lot of trash talk between Bowen, Yang, and Ariana Grande, and this felt like very much a sketch of like these two have insane chemistry off of the show. They work together on Wicked. They're really good friends. Let's find a way to get them together in a sketch and do something with them. So they go back and forth. It's a lot of tiny pecker stuff, and making fun of Bowen's thing, and yeah, just going at it with each other. Ultimately, we get sort of Ariana Grande being thrown around, but it's sort of like a dummy version of her, where we get like a doll, and it just gets chaotic. So, Sammy, how'd you feel about our charade sketch?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hold a candle to the first sketch of the night with the brat. I'm kidding, obviously. Yeah, no, this was by far my favorite live sketch of the night. This role for Ariana Grande, seeing like this is obviously the first sketch in this run of show where she's not singing. So being able to really showcase her, ability to like play this type of character and then play off Bowen was so great. I found like for me, the escalation here like really worked, just continuing to build off of that relationship and that dynamic between her and Bowen was great. And I guess if I only had one small gripe with this sketch, it would be, I found that as much as I was happy to see Jane and Emil in the sketch, especially because Emil's on my fantasy team, but just it felt like almost there was maybe too many characters. Like I was, trying to like kind of track, everybody in the sketch, and it kind of would have been nice to get like Longfellow and Dismukes or whoever's in the sketch like a little bit more to do. Obviously, the focal point is Bowen and Ariana here, but that was for me like my one gripe. But overall, it was great to see them play off of each other here.
Yeah, Kaleena, for a lot of hosts, this is the type of sketch where the Diane role goes to a cast member and the host ends up playing secondary. But in this case, it's very well written for Ariana and Bowen. So how did you feel about the sketch?
Yeah, I loved this. This was one of my highest of the nights. I feel like that role is something that we would assume would go to like Heidi in a lot of cases, for example. For the first, I don't know, maybe like 30 seconds, thought this was going to be, and I'm sorry that I can't remember the name of it or the hosts who have done it, but what's that sketch that's been kind of recurring where it's like the couple that comes and then the parent or someone takes one of them out of the room and they're like, you got to help me, you got to get me out of here, like I don't want to get married.
Oh, that was in the Ryan Gosling episode,
yes,
right?
Yes. I thought it was going to be like that. That's kind of what the setup was to me at first, and I was like, oh man, we're doing another one, like I feel like we kind of just saw this. And so then I was really pleasantly surprised when it was something completely different. I fully agree with all of your points, Sammy. I thought they were so just great to watch together. And again, as someone who's highly anticipating seeing the Wicked movie, I was just so excited to get to see them and kind of get like a preview of what their chemistry as co-stars is going to be. I'm a big fan of her, like transatlantic accent, which I'm sure we'll discuss. We got to see a couple times throughout the show tonight. I thought she was just so strong and confident in her approach to her role in this, which I think is not something that we get to see from every host. I also feel like this kind of made me remember like what a professional she is. I feel like she had her lines like memorized. I feel like very few times throughout the episode tonight in general did I see her looking at cue cards. And to me, she showed up like she was in a wrestling ring, like ready to go. Like she didn't seem intimidated. She felt so prepared to really hold her end of the sketch. And I think that's why it works so well, is because she's not kind of floundering around waiting to be saved by the other cast members. Her comedic timing, again, I'm gonna keep saying that tonight, was so good for me. When the dummy came out, I started laughing so hard. And then the ending was just, I didn't see it coming at all, and it was hilarious. I mean, this is really, really high ranking. I enjoyed this one a lot.
Yeah, and I thought Jane was pretty good in this sketch at the end with the line of like, to be fair, they did have crazy tension. Like, I know that some people were giving her a hard time after last week, but I think that she was good in this. And let's give her the time to grow on the show and find her way there. I'm happy that they gave her that role tonight to finish off the sketch. But yeah, Ariana was fantastic in this. This could have gone, I know you mentioned Heidi. This could have gone to cast members in previous eras. Like, I recognized them in her, and like I felt like she was really strong in this one. But here we have a very fascinating pre-tape coming up next, where Ariana Grande is the only person in it. It's a Celine Dion UFC promo, sort of like a Sunday Night Football promo, where it's talking about all of the elements of UFC, singing "It's All Coming Back to Me Now." And really interesting fun fact here. I was like thinking to myself, I was like, wow, it's been a long time since we've seen a host be in an SNL segment by themselves. Obviously, besides a monologue or besides like a musical performance, if they're doing double duty or something like that, it goes back all the way to season 45 when is it 45 when Adam Sandler last hosted the show. He did the Chris Farley song, and that was the last time that we've ever had like a host just like anchor his or her own segment. So thought it was really cool that they gave that to Ariana. It shows the trust that they had in her as a host tonight. So Kaleena, how do you feel about "It's All Coming Back to Me Now," or UFC promo? 44. Thanks, Alice. Yeah.
I felt a little mixed. On one hand, her Celine impression is really good. I also had the same thought, like, wow, it's cool to see that she's just the focus. That in particular made me feel like the writing was pretty strong overall tonight. Like, that was kind of the thought that was reoccurring. But at the same time, I was like, okay, but we get it. Like, she started with impressions in the monologue, and I don't know, it kind of felt like maybe an easy or like safe choice. Like, it just made me kind of wonder if that could have been subbed out for something that was a little edgier or a little zanier. It was something that didn't really hold my attention while it aired, and is not something that I will necessarily remember or would go back to watch or show somebody else, which is always kind of like an important deciding factor in how I rank the sketches. So I don't know. It served its purpose, I guess, but I think it kind of left me wanting something more.
Sammy, did you enjoy this one?
Yeah, this is interesting because I feel like my sort of gripe with this sketch kind of goes back to what you guys were saying. I keep bringing up the Bridesmaid sketch that I love so much. But in that sketch, being able to track the song and the jokes in the song or tracking the story, for me, I was struggling with this sketch sort of because her impression is so good, and was somewhat hard for me to kind of track the jokes she was making in the sketch. I found that the way this was put together and edited for me, and just like kind of how like zippy and snappy, like I was getting a lot of jokes from that, like going back and forth between her doing this like sort of ballad type, amazing singing, to like someone getting punched in the face in like a UFC ring. Like, to me, I found a lot of humor in that. This is actually one of the rare times where I actually like rewound the sketch like during while before I'm watching the show for a hot take show, because I was like, okay, I feel like I need to go back. Just, this is short enough, and I was able to catch a little bit more of the jokes the second time. So overall, I think on a second watch, this worked a lot better for me. But I did find that it was kind of hard to sort of track. But her performance, was obviously really solid.
Yeah, I like that I assume that they probably said, like, Ariana, what do you want to do this week? And she said, I would like to do a couple of impressions. And I think we got to see the Celine Dion impression in that title sketch in season 41, where the Diva channel was down, and then she did it a little bit. But the idea of Celine Dion doing a UFC promo it is very timely, given that she did do something for Sunday Night Football last week. So last week it was the Cowboys and the Steelers, like very famous rivalry, to get them on Sunday Night Football. And then Celine Dion did It's All Coming Back to Me Now, and all these highlights of the games were playing over it. So I guess it's one of those things that, like, you really got to have seen that to sort of get this. It was just like an interesting choice to do UFC, because UFC, very, very popular sport, but like it felt like a little like the connection there wasn't fully explained within the context of the segment. If I had to go after something there, but overall the impression was good, and I don't know that there was much there to break down beyond that. Of course, you had to be good with seeing all these people fighting, getting kicked in the nose, and the breaking of the bones and the knees to the balls, as she said. All right. Let's talk about Stevie Nicks. So first off, what a powerhouse, legendary performer. This is what season 50 is all about. Let's get some people from SNL's history. Let's bring them back onto the show. So we got her playing a new track, The Lighthouse, and a very famous track, obviously from the 80s, Edge of 17, to have her playing them on the show tonight. So let's get this out of the way. Let's talk about the technical thing, and then we'll get into the performances. So word coming out of Saturday Night Live is that there was an audio board issue. The audio board was freezing, so they were not able to go to her for the song, naturally, because the audio board wouldn't have played the audio for us at home. As a result of that, they decided to, while they were figuring out what to do, keep the bumper up there for everybody, watching the show live. They decided to double block and then go back to a commercial break, and then came in once the audio board was up and running. From one of our friends who was at the show tonight, in the house, they said that Ariana and Stevie were standing there ready to go. They were sort of looking at each other to be like, are you good to go? Shrugging, trying to figure out what's going on. And then, somebody came up to them, told them what was happening. They stood still and basically waited. And then Ariana tried to lighten the mood by repeating countdown numbers really loud. So she was having fun with the audience. So if you were in the house tonight, you sort of, like the mood was lightened, even though everyone was like trying to figure out what was going on. Ariana was having fun. And again, it goes to show how great of a personality that she is to have her there. So that was the reason that at home it looked like a little bit weird, but overall we still got the two performances in the show. So for the first time since 1983, we had Stevie Nicks perform on Saturday Night Live. Sammy Kay, how'd you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, this was amazing to see. Obviously, was very excited to see the Edge of 17. I wasn't familiar with the first song she performed, and I found that performance to be a lot stronger. And it was great to see her go back into her back catalog and perform such an iconic song like that. So I will say that the first performance for me at first was a slightly rough start, but that second performance to me was just absolutely incredible.
Kaleena?
Yeah, I have very similar sentiments. I'm going to say something controversial that I think is going to irritate people. I believe I first heard Edge of 17 as sung by Jack Black in School of Rock. So that's the origin story for me knowing that song. So she starts singing and I was like, oh, the School of Rock song. I'm kidding, guys. I know who Stevie Nicks is. Yeah, listen, I thought you were going to say
Bootylicious. It took the beat from that song, or Miley Cyrus recently a few years back, but it's obviously a classic song. People are going to interpret it.
Yes. I feel like there's going to be a lot of feedback, mostly on the internet, of people talking about how she sounded. But at the end of the day, it's no different than people like Paul McCartney who are still performing. Like, listen, they've been singing forever. Their voices are an instrument and a part of their body, and those things are going to change and they're going to lose strength. And there's a lot of very natural things that are going to happen when that's what they do forever. And at the end of the day, these people who love what they do and who have put out so much art that has changed the world are still coming out and doing these things. And like you mentioned, this is season 50. Like, it should be people like Stevie Nicks. It should be people who haven't been on the show in decades coming out and doing their thing. She did something new, and then she did something classic. And I think that is exactly what you want when you book Stevie Nicks on the show. So we can sit here and we can talk about her vocals, or we can talk about how this legend still came out looking gorgeous, did the thing, and she did it through a technical difficulty, which is like the kind of scary but exciting reason that we're still happy that SNL is a live show. I think it served exactly the purpose that it needed to.
Yeah, and she's 76. I mean, and just incredible that we get to see her on the show. At this point, if you are a newer fan to the show and you've never gone back and watched old seasons of Saturday Night Live, and you're lucky enough to find copies of episodes with musical performances, one of the really cool aspects of getting to watch old seasons of the show is getting to see what was popular in music during those times. So you really learn about pop culture in many different ways by watching Saturday Night Live, but especially with music, it's just fascinating to see like what were the popular acts or what were maybe the not so popular acts, but that were still really good songs from the time. And that's mostly true, except every now and then SNL does give us a musical moment that's a throwback to something, legendary. And I remember one of my favorite things that I ever saw on the show was Paul McCartney performing Hey Jude in 1993 on the show. Like, to me, one of the greatest performances I've ever seen then. And obviously, a song from decades earlier, but just to see it in season 18 and like see him performing and just going absolutely crazy with it was so much fun. So every now and then when you get these moments of these legends of music coming on the show and performing old songs, it goes to show you what the magic of Saturday Night Live, like, it's a little bit different. It's not, Chapel Roan coming on and performing the two of the hottest hits on the Billboard Hot 100 right now. It's something different. And I love that we got this, especially from a performer who was on the show in the 80s and hadn't been back since. So great job by SNL to book her for the show, rewarded longtime fans of the show and longtime fans of Stevie Nicks. And I'm so happy that we got to see her on the show tonight. Let's talk about Weekend Update that we had here. So we got two different sets of correspondence. First up, Ego Wodem is playing Monica, the happy Amazon employee during Prime Week. And I would say that it's been a little bit of a slower start to season 50 for Ego. Obviously, it's still a very important part of the show, but hasn't necessarily anchored anything coming into episode 3. But she gets her moment here to be front of camera, Sammy, and be this happy Amazon employee. So how'd you feel about this first piece we got on Weekend Update tonight?
I was so happy to see Ego at the update desk tonight when they kind of announced the character name. I honestly, like, gut reaction was expecting it to be Heidi, who obviously we'd love to see at the update desk, but we see a lot more than Ego. So it was great to see her. Just this all goes back to her sort of background, like as a performer at UCB. Like, she is so good with these types of characters. Her performance, I really enjoyed. The sort of crazy eyes, that's just the wired look, sort of the prop work with the package. All of that was really great. And, there were a ton of funny lines, in this performance that I wrote down, like, you can't get an STD from a USB. That was just fantastic. And, overall, just really enjoyed this. I do find that, the sort of idea of like an overworked Amazon worker is like something we've probably just heard like via update jokes before in general, like their work conditions being absolutely terrible. So I guess maybe the idea itself isn't like the freshest, but I found that Ego was able to, elevate it with her performance, and was just really happy to see her.
Yeah, this to me was like an athlete that sort of like hasn't got playing time yet, but then like they're just like ready to go after a couple weeks, and then you just like let them out, and then they just where was that? And I missed how great of a like seeing how great of a performer Ego is on the show. Kaleena, did you enjoy what we saw from her tonight?
Yeah, I was so pleasantly surprised to see her be the one that showed up because much like you were saying, Sammy, I think when they kind of do the introductions for these characters, we automatically like fill in the blank of who we think it's going to be. And I think especially for performers on this show, there's like so many different versions of neurotic or kind of manic right on the edge that you can play. And I feel like there's people who are really quick, really sharp. There's people who go really extreme. There's people that you just want to give them like a hug when they're playing these type of characters. And I feel like every time Ego just nails like the balance perfectly. Like she's really funny. She's quick-witted with it. You do kind of want to hug her. You do kind of want to make sure she's okay. You're like, wait, did I miss a line, or was there like a joke that almost went over my head? I can't even really explain it that well because she's just doing such a naturally good job at what I think that character is that it's hard for me to even try to dissect it and break it down. So I was really refreshed to have it start off with her on update.
I think the thing that I love the most about this character is the emoting that she did with just her eyes. Like, she didn't, the lines were really well written and her facial expressions were great, but just like her keeping her eyes open as wide as possible, as if she is so freaking tired. And just delirious, but still has to pretend to be happy, I think really works for the character. And I love that this didn't break down. Like the problem with some other Weekend Update correspondents that we've had in the past is like, then all of a sudden they just start like break down and they're crying and then like the facade is over, but she kept it throughout and kept it in character. That I really like that. Then we get Sarah Sherman and James Austin Johnson who come up, who are doing the Oasis reunion tour. They're the Oasis brothers. Kaleena, did you like seeing Sarah and JJ? Both season 47 rookies that came in together. We haven't really gotten to see them do too much together on the show, but this was fun to have them together on Weekend Update. So how'd you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, that was my first thought, was just what a fun pairing they were, because to be honest, I don't really have the understanding or context of who they were supposed to be, like, I don't know anything about them, and I almost think it's more fun when that's how it is, where, like, I don't understand, because then I'm really just getting to watch the actors kind of perform, and I'm getting to really purely enjoy their interpretation of it. Their accents kept getting, like, zanier to me as the bit went on, and both their ability to perfectly sync with each other, and then the moments where they were slightly out of sync with each other with their lines just made it that much funnier. I thought it was really punchy, and just the word legends has been in repeat on my mind since it
Legends.
happened. Legends.
Sammy, SNL Network legend. What do you think of this?
Legends. Yeah, I also really like this. Again, another sort of update zag for me where I hear, like kind of a musical type impression on update. I'm thinking, Jaj and Dismukes, and we got Jaj and Sarah Sherman. So that was like a nice surprise. Yeah, loved from like a meta perspective to see them play off each other, just knowing that they kind of came up at the show at the same time. Love to see that. Kind of similar to Kaleena. Like, I don't know a ton about Oasis other than, Wonderwall, and it's a big deal that they're going on this tour together. So, and that they, had like a falling out of some sort at some point. So, playing off of that aspect and just like, simplifying that relationship to just like bickering siblings, like, and, throwing like a British accent on there. Like, it was just solid for me, like very much solid performances. Love the references to old cartoons. I'm an easy mark for accents and the cartoon references. So, yeah, was happy to see this.
Yeah, me too. I was very happy to see this. I was happy to see them work together. We've seen James Austin Johnson separate from Sarah so many times on the update desk, or Sarah separate from JJ, but just to get them back together was really fun here on the update desk. And I thought they were having a good time with it. According to GPS in the chat, we got Sarah and James, who were cut after dress rehearsal, but then added back during the live show. So interesting, some timing stuff there, but happy that we got to see this in the show. Ashley Padilla, who did get shut out tonight, did have a character in dress rehearsal on the update desk who was a positivity correspondent. So that's the one that we did not get to see on the live show, but hopefully we get another appearance from Ashley. I mean, last week we got Jane Wickline, so it's only a matter of time before we get to see Ashley on the update desk. All right, first sketch after Weekend Update was this castle sketch where we head back to Italy in the late Renaissance period. James Austin Johnson is playing Matteo, who's talking to Andrew Dismukes, playing Prince Enzo. In comes Keena Thompson, who's demonstrating some music, but it's really Maya Rudolph and Andy Samberg who want to bring in their son Antonio, played by Ariana Grande, who can sing in a very high-pitched voice to show off for Prince Enzo. And this all ends up resulting in them explaining that they castrated their son, and that is why he can sing high forever. So some fun lines in this one. Great to get Maya and Andy in a sketch. Sammy, did you enjoy the castle sketch?
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed this sketch. Very bizarre. Just everything with the setting. Seeing Dismukes and JJ open it up, I kind of knew we were going to get something kind of weird. Obviously happy to see Maya and Andy as well. For me, Ariana Grande is, to me, like the standout in this sketch. She was giving off the vibes of like Chucky or like a horror movie villain, with like just how like stoic her face was. All of that was really great. I wrote in my notes, like, this feels like it's missing like a Fred Armisen cameo or something. Like, I feel like Fred would have played so well in this environment. But I don't know. I would say though, overall, like when it was all said and done, not that I was disappointed in the sketch, but I kind of was hoping it would kind of shift into an additional gear. Like, ending it with the twist and shout is kind of funny and dark. But I don't know. There was like some sort of missing element here for me to really take it to the next level. Like I felt like they had all the pieces as far as like casting goes. I don't know if this was an ad lib, but it was kind of felt like an ad lib when Andy just calls him Keenan. I really hope it's an ad lib, but if not,
I was hoping too. I don't think it was because, yeah, because
No.
that also happened in dress.
Yeah. Okay. Well, regardless, it worked. But yeah, no, I'd say, yeah, for me, like this had elements that could have made this like a real classic, and it ended up being like a really solid, good sketch at the end, towards the end of the night.
Kaleena, what were your thoughts on it?
I have an entire page of notes dedicated to this sketch.
Please
The
tell
most
us.
important thing is I wrote 10 out of 10. This was my favorite. I almost have no notes except for the fact that I have a page of notes. I laughed so hard at this sketch. Sometimes, and maybe this is kind of similar, Sammy, to the first sketch of the night that I already forgot about because I don't think it's funny. Sometimes these sketches hit us, and there's not necessarily rhyme or reason, but sometimes they just like hit you right in the funny bone. And that's something that I always love about SNL is there doesn't have to be a perfect formula. It's great when it works. And then sometimes it's just weird and it's just funny and it just works. This to me, I felt was more or less kind of a vehicle for Maya and Andy. I don't really know that Ariana was or was meant to be the star of this sketch. And yet she kind of was for me. The longer I stared at her outfit, I don't know if it was just because it was like giving Lord Farquaad or what was making me laugh so hard, but these small details were wrecking me. And the cuts, well, one, I was very impressed by the expression that she was able to maintain on her face in general, especially while she was singing. I know that she's obviously known for her whistle tone, but being able to maintain that tone and in a whisper, I think technically, vocally, is not an easy thing to do. So for her to be able to do that physically while also just like maintaining her expression and not having the people around her break, I thought was actually a like genuinely impressive moment in the show. But then when they started just cutting to her face, kind of in the way that they typically do to Keenan in sketches like that, it just kept making me laugh every single time. I wish it would have turned into a moment where they keep zooming closer every time they do it. Did you guys get reminded of the Cork Soakers sketch when watching this a little bit with Jimmy Fallon and Horatio Sands?
Why?
The accents a little bit,
Oh,
and then just
okay.
like talking about the twisting and like some of the wordplay. I don't know why it was just kind of making me think of that. I just thought it was ridiculous and so funny, and I love a bit where they can keep kind of taking the one thing like the twisting and the cast members can just keep going with it and it just keeps getting funnier. I don't know. This definitely belonged after update, but this is one that I would absolutely watch again and again and show it to friends.
I agree. I mean, I think any sketch that has to do with something in that region should have Andy Samberg in it. It just makes it better. Like he just loves talking about all of that. So I think that really worked here. There's a major difference. I want to talk about this sketch versus that first sketch we saw earlier in the night of the bridesmaid singing, where it was mentioned by one of you that the idea that they were singing badly sort of added to the sketch. And I think that works much better here because it really fits into the writing and the premise of like, we're going to have her singing so high to the point where even like it could annoy people at home, but we're going to do it because it matches the premise of the sketch, which is that her nuts got twisted off or his nuts got twisted off in the context of the sketch. And I think that really plays well because it was easy to follow. They were clearly having fun with it. And seriously, getting Andy Samberg and Maya Rudolph and Keaton Thompson together in the sketch really worked. And obviously the chemistry that James Lawson Johnson and Andrew Dismukes have just radiates off the screen. So for me, there was a lot of things here where it seems like everybody was having a good time. We were all able to enjoy it. And this is like the perfect after update sketch, as Kaleena mentioned, because due to the subject matter and our ability to process these sketches later on in the evening. So this for me was a huge win. Then we moved to a sketch that was sort of a format we've seen before, sort of like Andy Samberg and Jimmy Fallon, or Jimmy Fallon and Mick Jagger, where we're doing like the mirror thing, where it's two people doing impressions to each other as if they're in the mirror with each other. And we get Chloe Fineman as Jennifer Coolidge and Ariana Grande as Jennifer Coolidge going dueling Coolidges here from Maybelline, New York. And they're gonna, have some fun with the impressions, a little, spray with the Windex on the mirror and spraying at each other. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Dana Carvey pops up in the sketch as our third Coolidge. Major jump scare there, but we got Dana Carvey in, but we got 3 Coolidges in the Maybelline New York sketch. Kaleena, your thoughts on this one?
I really, really enjoyed this one. I know that as you're discussing, it's kind of like a format that we've seen before, but I think when all the people involved are really good at it, why shouldn't we give them a platform to just kind of duel and have fun with it? Like, yeah, a lot of people can do a Coolidge sketch, a lot of people can do Nicolas Cage or Adam Sandler or whatever. But I think especially putting it like right at the end is just really fun. And then Dana showing up blew me out of the water. I don't know what I was expecting the sketch to be. I thought they were just kind of going to go back and forth, and then it was kind of just going to fizzle out. Adding Dana was so great. Having them kind of applying the gloss to each other, and them not knowing where the cameras were, and them kind of making each other break. I feel like, especially again towards the end of the episode, that's kind of just what you want to see. Like, you've seen them put in the hard work, everything's gone well. You kind of just want to be reminded that they're all having fun. Like, even though they're at work, they're having a great time with each other. And I think that's what we saw here. I think it was a really lighthearted, cute way to kind of wrap up the episode.
Sammy, your thoughts on it?
Ooh, so I was loving this sketch, like absolutely loving it. I honestly thought Ariana Grande's impression was better than Chloe's in this particular sketch. I think the prior times that she's done it, it's hard when you're comparing the two. And I've seen Ariana Grande do this impression on talk shows and stuff. So it's such a great impression. And I was loving this. But I feel like having the third person come in here and it not be Jennifer Coolidge, like the real person, like, to me, on one level, you're kind of setting that up in a way. And even the part where they are like kind of cleaning the mirror. I don't know about you guys, but when they're cleaning the mirror, I thought they were going to do a swap and you're going to get the real Jennifer Coolidge in there. So there's that. And then Dana comes in, who I am so happy that Dana Carvey is in the building, but I just felt like the sketch kind of tanked a little bit once he comes in there. I didn't think his impression was great. And to me, he sounded like Lil Nicky, the Adam Sandler movie. Please go back and watch the sketch at home and let me know if you feel the same way. And then it kind of just ended. So maybe I'll rewatch this, and some of those expectations will be out of my head, and I'll be able to have a different feeling on it. But strong start, weird finish for me as far as this one goes.
So it's interesting, like, what really defines wrecking a sketch? Like, obviously that could be really personal to you. It could be subjective, but to me, like, it's really hard to wreck a sketch that is already so silly. And I think that's why Dana's character, like, obviously Dana's impression of Jennifer Coolidge is not anywhere near as good. And this is like one of the greatest impressionists in the history of the show. It's nowhere near as good as Chloe Fineman's or Ariana Grande's. But I think the fact that the sketch is so silly already and is sort of like breaking down before he even gets in there makes it kind of okay. Like, it makes it like fun that happened. So for me, like, I enjoyed that aspect of things. And don't look now, but Chloe Fineman is having an excellent season 50. Just putting it out there. Like, so far through 3 episodes, really solid stuff from Chloe Fineman. All right, our final sketch of the night. We basically, like I said, we snap our fingers, and all of a sudden, Ariana Grande is transported to this hotel, which is a pre-taped sketch that ran live in dress rehearsal. So if you're following that, this is a sketch from the dress rehearsal, which there is an audience for and happens before the live show. We go to the hotel detective. So like I said, huge night for Andrew Dismukes and James Austin Johnson. They're with Ariana Grande, and they're one-upping each other as detectives, and a lot of, Stan Stanley speech, and they're sort of, having fun with the fast speak and all of that stuff, all the stuff that you would think of with detectives. It ultimately results in an appearance from Michael Longfellow, who's playing Rod Serling. must be one of the most impersonated people in the history of Saturday Night Live, but it ends up being a Twilight Zone sketch. So, Sammy, take us home. What do you think of the hotel detective dress version?
Yeah, the last sketch of the night for hot take shows for me are always like so like like just trying to like really wrap my head as I'm about to come do the show. What was happy to see again another JJ and Dismuke's piece. Going into this episode thinking this will be a Bowen episode. This really felt like a JJ and Dismuke's episode, which is really interesting. JJ is so good at that old timey speak. He has that sort of thing that, Bill Hader would bring a lot to on the show, that sort of affinity to those old timey accents and things like that. And Ariana Grande was able to, go toe to toe with him. The whole concept was so weird. But I found it to be just as far as like a 10-1 goes, or I guess a 5-1 in this case, to me was just like, kind of the exact type of thing I want to see, for the last sketch of the night. I did find, again, like sometimes, just that final button. I don't know if the Twilight Zone thing for me, again, we've seen that so many times on the show. I guess it's an easy thing to go back to, but especially with just like Twilight Zone's place in the culture today, like, is that the way we want to necessarily end the sketch? Maybe because it's in black and white, it's just an easy out there. But I was happy to see this when with all the delays and everything. I was expecting we weren't going to get an additional sketch here.
Kaleena, how do you feel about this final sketch we got of the night?
Yeah, I hate to just directly plagiarize Sammy, but those were honestly my exact thoughts. I'm so glad you explained what happened, because my first note just says, I cannot comprehend this quick change, because I did not understand what happened. It was fun. It seemed like in the very beginning of the sketch that Ariana was breaking a little bit. So I'm a little bit curious to even address maybe like what were the moments leading up to that, because it seemed like they had to kind of roll into it for a second. I was a little bit confused what the sketch was going to be at first. I also love when they kind of do these like golden age of Hollywood type sketches. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I really like her transatlantic accent, and absolutely JAJ really kind of nails that role as well. I also agree that the Twilight Zone kind of like bookend of the sketch just felt kind of weirdly out of place, because for a minute there with like the reoccurring bit, it kind of reminded me of almost like Dear Sister, where they just take the one thing and they're like, no, it's me doing this thing, and no, it's me doing this thing, and they're kind of doing like the Russian doll of the bit, right? So that was working for me perfectly fine. Definitely was working for an end of the episode thing, and then the Twilight Zone part just kind of threw me off a little bit. Didn't ruin the sketch for me though. I thought it was I don't know, if I always think at the end of an episode, like if I were to have rearranged the order of sketches, where would I put it? And I don't necessarily know where else I would have put that sketch. So it kind of just ranks in the middle for me.
Yeah, I mean, it reminded me of how great of a performer James Austin Johnson is. I mean, it's hard to forget, but he just brings it, and he has such a variety to his performing abilities. And I don't know, I really enjoyed getting to see this at the end of the night. I'm so curious what it would look like as a live sketch versus the dress. But of course, these are the fun things about SNL is, it's a live television show and you never know what's going to happen. And literally, like, as this sketch is being shown, I guess, to the audience from dress rehearsal, and this being shown to us at home from dress rehearsal, in the studio, there is another sketch, a cinema classic sketch, which I'll tell you about in just a moment, that the set is being taken down because they would have gone to that sketch in live, and this sketch would have been cut for time. So all of these like last minute changes are always fun to analyze and look back on. But history will remember this sketch being in the Ariana Grande and Stevie Nicks episode to finish off the night. So we're going to do our ratings out of 10 in a moment. So chat, get all of your ratings in there. And I'm going to tell you what was cut from the night that we didn't get to see on the air show. So as mentioned, Ashley Padilla was supposed to be on Weekend Update as a positivity correspondent. We also had some additional sketches that were cut. So the cut for time, I guess, in theory, cinema classic sketch was known as The Blob. And this was a sketch where Ariana keeps singing as Judy Garland in what was supposed to be a sequel of The Blob. Featured Keenan as always, Reese DeWatt, we would have gotten back there. Ariana as Judy Garland, Longfellow and Sarah as a couple, and Dismukes and JAJ as cops. So it would have been an even bigger night for James Austin Johnson and Andrew Dismukes to get that. We also had 4 other sketches that were cut after dress rehearsal. So We got a sketch where Ariana and Bowen use their role as spookers to try to get cast by an agent in a Halloween spooky maze. So that featured Keenan as the lead spooker, a Longfellow who wants to touch people, Ego, Ariana, and Bowen, and the customers were Heidi and Mikey as a couple, Emil, Devin, and Marcelo as pals, and Ashley and Sarah were in this one as an actress and agent. So as I mentioned, Ashley was shut out from the night, would have been in this one as well. We had another sketch where we called it Maiden and the Captain, where Ariana and Longfellow, JJ, Emil, Devin, and Dismukes are all there as reviewers. Reviews constantly interrupt a promo for Maiden and the Captain, particularly from one reviewer, Dismukes, who complains that the actors look better than the actual people. This was a sketch that was from Andrew Dismukes' stand-up that he had done for many years prior to being on the show. We have another sketch called Torture Room, where Ego holds Ariana and Mikey hostage as she has a midlife crisis. Ego has a voice modulator and mask and lets Ariana be free at the end for being compassionate. So that was mostly what we got from the night. As mentioned, the cold open was trimmed down a little bit. Mikey had some more lines in it. Maya originally said live from New York in the dress rehearsal. And in the King's Throne sketch that we got towards the end of the night, Heidi was in that one in dress with a guitar, but we didn't get to see her in that version in the live show. So those are the changes between dress and air. Sammy, overall, from what we saw on this wild night of the 50th season, the third episode of Saturday Night Live, how will you rate this out of 10?
Yeah, like I said, going into this one, I don't know if my expectations were low, but I didn't really have a ton of expectations. And I think Ariana Grande definitely delivered as a host, somebody who I definitely want to see come back soon. I thought her performances kind of elevated some of the weaker material tonight. Good to see Dana, Maya, and Andy again. And obviously having Stevie Nicks in the building as well. Made this a pretty solid episode for me. I'd probably go with a 7 out of 10 for tonight. Yeah.
Kaleena, what is your rating for this episode?
I'm not gonna lie that when the episode ended, I initially had it at an 8 because I just had a lot of fun with it. And then I sat on it for like a little bit. I put it down to a 7.7, and I will not go lower because of the King's Castle sketch alone. It could be at a 10 just based on that single sketch for me.
Okay. All right. I'm a little bit lower in terms of my rating tonight. I think I'm going to go with a 6 out of 10 for this one. I think there were a lot of good moments in this. 6 out of 10 is still pretty good. I mean, this was a really good episode for a lot of sketches. Other moments I felt like had potential and didn't necessarily fully get there. I can maybe go 6.5 if I'm going to give a la Andrew Dick a bonus half point here for Stevie Nicks, who it was so great to get her back on the show. And I think we're always going to remember that. But for me, I'm probably, I'm hovering. I'll go 6.5 out of 10. Feeling good. Going to lock that in for the third episode of the season. I think that this wasn't as strong as the Bargatze episode we got last week, but certainly stronger than the premiere that we got. So I feel pretty good. And Ariana Grande was a fantastic host tonight. So just like round of applause, Ariana, to have her back. Happy to get her back in another few years. Let's go 5 more years, get Ariana back at the show. I think she'd make another great host. So very exciting to talk about this episode tonight. And I am very excited to get into this episode all week long. So join us on Monday night at 8 p.m. on our roundtable show, where we will get into the history of Ariana Grande on Saturday Night Live. We didn't even talk about that tonight, but she has a wild history with SNL since she first came on the show. So we'll get into that a little bit more on Monday and talk about this episode even further. Of course, we'll discuss some Stevie Nicks and all of that on our roundtable on Monday night. And then special day on Tuesday, we will have our By the Number show of next week. So Tuesday instead of Wednesday, if you're looking for us to be live, Mike will have the By the Number show on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern of next week. He'll go through all the statistics from week number 3. So they're really piling up after 3 weeks to figure out which cast members are doing well, which ones are lagging behind. And I feel like we got some new players that have entered the power rankings race after week number 3. So I'm excited to watch and see what Mike has to say on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then, of course, I will have the patron sketch breakdown later on in the week. So if you want to join us at patreon.com/the SNL Network, you can vote on the sketch that you want us to dive into even further. So that will be out in the middle of the week next week as well. Very excited to talk through this episode all week long. And then, of course, we will be back for the 4th week in a row next week with host Michael Keaton. We've seen him before at the show. and Billie Eilish as musical guest, another former host. So a great pairing. One of the biggest age discrepancies, I think, in headliners in the history of the show. So it'll be really, really fun to talk about Michael Keaton and Billie Eilish next week to wrap up our first 4 episodes, the first run of season 50 of Saturday Night Live. And I'm looking forward to being with all of you next week for that. So Sammy Kay, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Anything you would like to say to listeners?
Listeners, as always, thank you for joining us here, late at night, 2:35 in the morning. Crazy that you guys are all up watching us talk SNL, and I love you for it. You guys can find me at that Sammy K on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And as always, here occasionally on the Saturday Night Network. It's been a pleasure talking this episode with you guys tonight.
Yeah, awesome to get to hang out with you, Sammy. Kaleena, thanks for joining us. Your first time doing a hot take show on the East Coast. So how was it for you?
I'm so sleepy, but I'm still so happy to be here.
You did it.
I'm so happy to be back with you guys. It's been too long. I hope to join you a lot more for season 50. I'm so excited just as a fan. I think it's such a privilege to be like in real time, like part of the 50th season, and not something that I'm going to be reading about a long time from now. So I can't wait to see what the rest of the season has in store and keep chatting about it with you all.
Yeah, seriously, what a time to be alive. Whether you're a fan of SNL in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, or today, whatever it is. I mean, we're here. We're talking about this historical show. I know a lot of you got to see or will go see the Saturday Night movie, which got its official, release. Was it? I guess it's almost 2 days ago now, but on October 11th. And go out, check out Jason Reitman's movie and go see that. I got to see it at the premiere, and it was just like it's a fantastic story about the history of Saturday Night Live and how it got started. And of course, we've been documenting that through our first 15 episodes of the Everything You Need to Know About Saturday Night Live series that we released on the YouTube channel. So in case you missed any of those and you want to hear about SNL history, a great way to do that over here. But seriously, what a great time to be an SNL fan, to celebrate the history of the show. And we're going to do that all season long with all of you. So you got to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify to never miss any episode. Love getting to see your thoughts in the chat. And if you're watching this after the fact, let us know what you thought of the episode and what you thought of our discussion of the episode. Put those YouTube comments in. I want to read all of them and hear all of your thoughts. So get those in over the next few days as you watch this show, and make sure to follow us on social media at the SNL Network on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X, so you never miss anything we got going on over there. We got a lot of fun Ariana Grande and Stevie Nicks content already up, and we're going to post even more throughout the week as we head towards Michael Keaton and Billie Eilish. I want to thank LateNighter.com for being our presenting partner for the show tonight, and everybody in the chat for staying up late with us. And thanks to Sammy Kay and Kaleena Steakle for joining me on this show. My name is Jon Schneider from the Saturday Night Network, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.